Flosstube. It's Arlene here. It is Wednesday, August 24th, 2022. And I'm glad to be back here making a video and visiting with you all. If you're new to my channel, welcome. This is all about Needlework Expo releases, and so I know those are the kind of videos that you might be watching somebody new. So if you are new, thank you very much. And if you're one of my returning people, so appreciate you coming back. This video is going to be devoted just to my Needlework Expo releases. I actually had a bunch of other little things, that I was going to do as a second part of the video, and I decided, you know what, I'll save that for a whole separate video. So if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say the words Needlework Expo, coming up this weekend, although I'm doing this on Wednesday, so I don't know when you're watching it, the last weekend of August is an online virtual market, wholesale market. It's not a retail market. It is an opportunity for stores to purchase directly from designers, sort of like how Nashville is, but doing it in a virtual way such that we can make connections. We're going to be on, it's not Zoom technology, but the idea of video, but no one has the expenses of traveling to Nashville. Now, of course, it's wonderful to be in person. The way this has evolved, simply put, is the vision is that every year there will be two markets, the Nashville in person in March, and then an online one here at the end of August. As much as I understand, a lot of designers would use September 1st as a good release date over the last few years, and I think that's why the end of August makes sense for an expo like this. So anything you see, if you've been following along on Instagram or Facebook pages or whatever, let your LNS or ONS, whoever you get your patterns from, let them know that you want it, and they can pick up what you're interested in and get it to you as soon as possible. So if you follow me on Instagram, you have probably already seen these, but I'm excited to share with you and tell you a little bit more about each of them. If you are familiar with me/my designs, I like to share a story when there's a story. And so I was writing out my list and sort of hemming and hawing over what order I should do it in. And the whole save the best for last, what makes something the best? I decided to jump in with the one I'm most excited about. So here we go. I am excited to present to you a sampler that I have done. If you can remember, or if you know in general, I'm not quite a sampler designer. The ones I have done have been pretty special, done for a special reason. And this is right along that same category. This past January, I released the pattern for Rosina Dizery, 1820. It was stitched while she was at the New York African Free School, and it's one of very few samplers known to have been stitched by a black girl, and I was so happy to bring it to the community. I've been pursuing a number of different directions to see what else could be out there in terms of the known black girl samplers, and I've hit some walls. I'm still pursuing some things. But in my research of looking into kind of all possibilities, I was reading a book. It was actually a catalog of exhibit in Maryland. And there was a chapter or an essay in the book titled Race and Religion in Maryland Samplers. Now, the race part is what drew me to that chapter title, that essay title. And so there was some of the very pieces of information I was looking for, very helpful. But then the second half moved into a religion aspect. So many samplers out there have Bible verses or Christian sayings of some kind. And I know that every so often I've wondered, what about a girl who wasn't Christian? I mean, would such a girl even go to such a school or have such a teacher? Would it just be a different scenario? The book in the essay in the book, when it came to that religion part, was focused a little bit more Catholic versus Protestant and different forms of Protestantism, and little pieces of information were put together. But then there was a little footnote after a few sentences somewhere. This is the lesson. You always read the footnotes, people. There was a brief little thing about the Jewish population in Maryland at various times, and the footnote said that there were two samplers in the collection of the National Museum of American History, which is one of the Smithsonian museums. And these two samplers had Hebrew letters on them. Hebrew being the language spoken, used for Jewish religion, biblical, everything related to Jewish. And I was intrigued with that. If you don't know, I grew up Jewish, so I've put out Hanukkah designs and Passover things and so on, just bringing that aspect of my life into my stitching designing world. So easy Google search to find the samplers that were being referred to in that footnote. Took a chance, wrote an email. The email got passed around to a few places, and it ended up with someone that said, yes, we are giving you permission to do this. So I like to present to you B. Hollander, 1845. Now, number of things to share with you about this. At first glance, I know if I didn't know what I was looking at, I'd be like, all right, it's got alphabets. It's all right. Nothing too crazy there. But then look carefully at this top row. And that is the Hebrew alphabet. And unfortunately, nothing is known about B. Hollander. There isn't even a first name. It's B. And the mystery is there. There's just the Smithsonian there's no way to trace any information. The Rosina Disri sampler that I put out, I so loved sharing all the information that was known about her. So I don't have the information about B, I just call her B, but there was still a lot that I wanted to share. So on a couple different topics, how did this sampler come to the American History Museum, or National Museum of American History, is, how do I put that? Well, there's the other sampler. There were two that are very similar. The other one came to the museum in a very odd collection, and there's a whole story there that you can Google if you want. And then the B. Hollanders came because it was only about 10 years ago. It came up for sale. Someone recognized, oh my gosh, that's very similar to the one at the Smithsonian. Let's do it. So a little bit of what's known about that, which is to say not much. But then I love to write information, and in this pattern you are getting a little essay, the little that's known about the sampler, but really a little bit more about Hebrew and that kind of contemplation. So I know that this is likely to appeal to those who are Jewish or interested in stitching for someone who is Jewish, but I'm going to give you a little lesson here if you're interested, especially if you're not someone who is familiar with Hebrew. First of all, Hebrew is read from right to left. And I went to Hebrew school growing up. I learned Hebrew. I learned in a way that a lot of Jewish kids, which is to say, I learned how to make what sounds the letters made, and how to pronounce it, and got fairly decent at reading it out loud fairly quickly, and not had a clue what I was saying. Or, I mean, that's exaggerated, but because we learn vocabulary words and stuff. But because it is a language that uses different alphabets, you can just focus on the basics of what sounds you make and read a whole lot, slowly, fast, whatever, and not know what you're saying. So, when I started working on this, it was really helpful to kind of familiarize myself with my Hebrew alphabet again. Oh, I meant to bring up a piece of paper, but that's okay. So one question that does come up so in the pattern, I've shared some about Hebrew. I have wondered about how B in 1845 came to do this, because Hebrew as a modern language did not exist in the 1840s. It has been around for centuries, and it was used solely for religious purposes, in synagogue prayers and services, in the Torah, which many of you would say what's called the Old Testament. The Torah is the 5 books of Moses, blah, blah. So what's going on there? So I started doing research about education, particularly girls' education, Jewish girls' education. And there's not a whole lot of concrete pieces of information that I found. But now I'm getting myself off track here. Sorry about this. Let me go back to the history of Hebrew. Hebrew became a modern language thanks to a number of people in the 1880s that made it so. they wanted to bring Hebrew into the world outside of the synagogue, and they did. It is a unique story of one, if not the only one, language that was considered a dead language that has been brought back to life. It is now fully used in Israel. Is certainly speaks Hebrew, or has Hebrew as one of its official languages. Newspapers and magazines and all of that. You can get a Hebrew keyboard, which I actually did because I wanted to write a couple Hebrew things in the pattern, so I figured out how to make Hebrew letters on my computer. So she was stitching this before Hebrew was a modern language. How did she learn it? Judaism, especially historically, has favored the boys in terms of education, but I did find evidence that in the youngest grades, girls would go to the same school as boys, and they would learn like the alphabet and some of the basics. And as the children got older, there would be a split in the focus of education, and girls would be focusing on what it takes to have a kosher home and to be take care of your family and all of those kind of pieces, such that they needed to know enough Hebrew to participate in services and prayers, but maybe not to the extent of studying that some of the boys grew up doing. So I'm going on and on about Hebrew here. I have included all of this just because I think it's interesting to learn something new. And if you are so inclined, there's an essay for you to read about. There's one piece I do want to share because I just think it's a neat little piece. So again, I had to kind of refresh myself about my Hebrew, my letters, and the sounds they made. And I'm sort of working on charting from the design, from the picture, high resolution picture that I got from the American History Museum. And I'm plotting along, and I'm kind of paused and thought about something and then consulted sources, and I was correct. If you were to ask me how many letters are in the Hebrew alphabet, the general answer to that is 22. Now, why do I say general? Because there are also 5 of those 22 letters that have a separate form, like literally a separate symbol, a separate letter, if it's used at the end of a word. Now, why is that? I don't know. Okay, if that's the case, why is there not what's called a Sophete form or a final form of every letter to be used at the end of words? I don't know, but there's 5 of them that have it. And so my Hebrew reading people, so there's one. So that's the regular one, but when it comes at the end of the alphabet, you would see that. And there's another one, and when it comes at the end of the alphabet, you would see that. So because there's 5 letters, sometimes you see 27 letters written out if you're looking at I don't know, whatever. B stitch 24. And what's missing is 3 of those final form letters. Now again, you would either see 22 letters or 27 letters. Why did she stitch only 2 and not all 5? I was researching to see if maybe those 3 letters didn't exist in the 1840s, and that's not the case. This is my theory, and it is only my theory, but I think it's a good one. How many times do we see samplers where there's a student who's not spaced things out correctly, and you get a squished in little, last XYZ of the alphabet, or their name or something because they just haven't counted correctly? My guess is that as B was stitching along, she realized she wouldn't have enough space to do all 27 letters. So she had already stitched the first 2 out of the 5, and then she kind of said, yeesh, I better just get to the regular ones. And the other 3, which are later on in the alphabet, aren't here. Now again, that is totally my theory, but I think it's a good one. The sampler is quite colorful, yes, but also it's clearly damaged from time. There's watermarks and so on the original. So, I was doing my best to represent what I saw, what B's work was, but there's moments where, this part of the green was washed out and this part, the green bled, and I just had to make decisions. So I am excited to have B. Hollander as one of my releases. One last thing about B. Because because there may be interest in it from the Jewish perspective, and coming up in September are the high holidays, which is Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the very important time of the year in the Jewish calendar. I've decided that I'm not keeping this as a Needlework Expo exclusive. My others will be, which is to say only stores attending the expo and purchasing from me, they'll have first dibs of being able to sell it. And in a few weeks, I'll be putting all these on my Etsy store. But this one, as of this video, is available now on my Etsy store. Just so if there's anyone out there, and actually I got 2 emails about this, who is interested from that very perspective, Rosh Hashanah, Hebrew, sampler, put it all together, you can get started as soon as you would like. So links to those, the paper copy and the PDF copy, are down below. And I hope there are people who are out there enjoying it and learning a little bit about Hebrew if it's not something you already know about. So, B. Hollander, 1845. And it's stitched all in, I stitched it all in DMC on 2/2 on a 32 count R&R, Abecedarian. I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. And like I said, there's almost a 3-page essay in here to share information with you all. All right, next up, and I'm pretty sure one of my last couple of videos I did, probably not, the last one was all about the retreat, maybe in the video before, I did share a piece of this, so if you've seen part of it already, awesome. The others you can predict. I shared a season, and I'm going to say it was autumn, and that was the first one I stitched of a new series, a new pattern. You get all 4 seasons together, called Seasonal Colors. And let me just, here's the autumn one. The stitching on this, like the white, the letters, is not stitched. It's similar to a Sisi embroidery where you would stitch the background and leave like the main motifs blank because that stands out. It's not exactly that. There's lots of differences, but that's the idea. Is so I left the wording, I got this lighting, ooh, that's good lighting there. All stitched in weeks, 4 weeks that said autumn to me. And here were 4 that said winter to me. And here were spring ones. And here is summer. Now, I'm going to be honest, I wish I had done a different yellow, one that would stand out a little bit more. But it's fine. And as I have written in the pattern, these are the weeks, the colors that reminded me of the seasons. You could have a total, I know like a lot of beach things are like a tangerine and turquoise color. Maybe that's what you think of when you think summer. Or you want to do autumn and very much more of Halloween colors. So all 4 designs are in one pattern. Each of them used 4 weeks. I did my best to put some DMC equivalents. Some of them are pretty variegated, so it's only a real approximation of a DMC. And I finished them as flat folds. They could be all stitched together. They're the same size. You can see how I adjusted the words. Winter didn't take up as much space as summer. So the overall is still the same size. So, seasonal colors. Excited to be sharing these. Each of them is 79 by 34 stitches. And like I said, all stitched with weeks. I'm going to get a better organization thing going on here. All right, next up, spiral. Here we go. So I finished this in a coupe, and I envision it kind of like in a display like this. It certainly could have a hanging thing, and it could be hung or finished however you want. But a circular finish like this, a hoop, makes it easy. This is all stitched in Sulky, the Sulky Cotton Petites, number 12. And the inspiration for this was using my Sulkies for something else. And how many of us got those containers, love those containers, and barely use the threads? So I was looking particularly at what they refer to as their blendables, which you could sort of say is they're not hand dyed, over dyed. And some of their blendables are more monochromish, and some of them are distinctly different colors. black and white. I would love to. This is black, white, and gray. Anyone have an idea of what fabric you could use to stitch this on? Like what color? All right, I'm getting off track here. So I was looking at my blendables, and I wanted to come up with something that I could use to stitch one of them, or more of them, but I went with one of them. A long time ago, someone talking about stitching in threads and color had shared with me, you may already know this, but at the time I learned it, it was like, wow, what a great tip. If you're trying to figure out color, like a color palette that appeals to your eye, go to a store that has a lot of good threads and look at the over dyes, hand dyes, and find one that just appeals to you. And you may not actually stitch with that thread, but pull the colors from that thread and stitch with them. And it's a great way to kind of like, again, there's so many beautiful threads out there, and there's some that I could look at, and for one reason or another, it doesn't appeal. But so I went through the blendables, and I decided on this one, and I pulled out the peachy, the pinkish, and the gray, excuse me, and the green, and came up, so you can see the blendable alternating with the green and the pink. So this is charted as if there are 3 colors involved. I just did a couple of visions of it. You could get a totally different look if you go with two colors, or this is like, you know, 2 different shades of the same color. It's a fun little stitch, and I love the effect. I just think it's got a cool effect. I was pulling out, when I went to get this guy, I was just pulling out some other, trying to picture if I used, for example, this one, what colors would I put to go with it? And it is just a fun thing to play with. So if you have your sulkies, find ways to use them. And I did, and now I'm excited to use them even more. The spiral is 85 over 85, like not 80, 85 by 85 stitches. I stitched it on 32 count, and like I said, with the sulkies. Piles, put that here. All right, next up is, I was struggling to find the word, a re-release is what I'm calling it, of a pattern that was literally one of my earliest patterns. I had not stitched a model for it. I had just done the computer mock-ups. I had started stitching, didn't finish it. I got back into it and made some improvements on the pattern such that I like it better. And so here it is. This is 3 lacy squares. And I finished them, I put them all together on one piece of fabric, getting all crooked here, as a wall hanging. They work perfectly fine, one, if you just do one at on its own. I know someone who did one and just used it for a biscorno, but I also liked the look of this. Now, like I said, I'd started stitching it and I stopped, and part of it was because I loved the thread I was using, but then I also got distracted by other projects. I stitched this using Silk in Colors Medieval Mulberry. It's like gray and burgundy, and I don't know what else to call it, and I just love it. So I'm so glad that I made this happen, and like I said, made some improvements on the pattern. Each of the squares is 89 by 89. I stitched it 2 over 2 on pearl gray linen, a 32 count. I finished it like this, but there's plenty of other ways you can do it, and it is ready to be hung. So 3 lacy squares. Moving things out of the way. I guess I have 6. I should have said that at the beginning. So here we are at number 5, which, if you watch my previous videos, is not really new to you, because I did a special early release of this for the New Jersey Flosstube retreat, which I ran just a month ago. So attendees had the opportunity to purchase this in person. And it is called Stained Glass Flowers. This is the first of a planned 3 of them, so a total of 9 flowers I am planning to make. And I stitched these with DMC Etoile. Now, I'm trying to do with a little bit of movement. Maybe you can see some of that sparkle. If you've never stitched with DMC étoile, get your hands on a skein, give it a try. In my area, I can find it at like a Michael's. I don't know about Joann's. I don't know. I have been able to purchase it at Michael's as well as at my LNS. It adds a little sparkle to your stitching. And so these are stitched completely using étoile. The solid, the black, they're stitched 2/2. No, see, yeah, 2/2. I did this on 32 count Joblin. But the background parts, like the white area, I also stitched that. I just used one strand and I made a tent stitch. And that just, again, in person, much more than over the screen, gives that much extra look to a stained glass. It looks more like a stained glass, just to have that extra shimmer. So I love these. I have already started, I've planned out sort of the other 6, started working on one, which I think I might have shared in the last video. Go back and watch it if you're interested. So here these are, and again, do some sparkly so you can see. So stained glass flowers. And then the last of my new releases, you may have been seeing a lot on Instagram and Facebook pages and in people's Flosstube videos about the autumn garden collaboration. I'm trying to think of what the right word is. Sure, collaboration. It is using cottage garden threads. It is the Autumn Garden X Stitch the Rainbow 2022. There's all these hashtags and things that you'll see written here. Every design, there are 25 designers that are coming out with designs either at Expo or around Expo. Some are not participating and so on. But around this time, there is a website, I'll link it below, that you can go to and see all the information there is to see about each of these. So there's a wonderful organizer, Ryan, who has, and multiple people might be working on this, who've put this all together in one website, so a one-stop shop to get information. So the designers were all given the same task. You have 4 cottage garden threads, which if I was really good, I'd have them in front of me right now, and I don't know. Like, I've already put them away. I should have had them out. 4 cottage garden threads, which are beautiful overdyes. It's my first time stitching with them. You can only use those 4, and you were limited to 60 by 60. And it just goes to show the amount of creativity in our cross-stitch world. So this is my contribution to that project. I call it Flowers for the Fall. I finished it as a little pillow. So the 4 colors, again, I should have had them out. There is a variegated yellow brownish. There is a blue. So the yellow is called dandelion. Did I say blue? I mean green. It's like a bluish green, but it's a green called spruce. There is an orange called terracotta. And then there's a very much overdyed with green, yellow, and orange thread called Golden Gully. And I use the Golden Gully in the border. The border has some, the solid with the dandelion with the yellow, and then the rest of the border is the Golden Gully. Obviously an autumn garden palette. I believe the plan is this kind of collaboration will be done again with a different theme, and I think it's a great idea. If you are someone that, would get into this, like I said, I'll link a website. You will see all the patterns will have this logo, and you'll see that logo on Instagram posts as well. So that can help lead you to, and there's hashtags and so on that can help lead you to find all of them that you are interested in. If anyone is going to plan on stitching all 25, I think that would be a really cool project. 25 is a perfect number. You can do 5 by 5. You could do them all on one piece of fabric. I don't know. I think it'd be very cool if somebody did that. So there you go, my contribution. So there are my 6 projects. Now, this was not pre-planned. But as I was evolving over the last couple of months, finalizing which projects and what, everything was in a different stage of finished in terms of stitching and so on, I realized that I have 6 projects where I have used 6 different threads. My sampler is DMC. The seasonal colors is Weeks. The spiral is Sulky. The 3 lacy squares is Silken Colors. The Stained Glass Flowers is Etoile. And the Flowers for the Fall Autumn Garden is Cottage Garden Threads. And again, I didn't do that on purpose, but it just, I don't know, it amused me to think about that. And then maybe there was a little bit of purposefulness on this part. My 6 projects are all finished in different ways. Almost. So, the sampler is framed. The seasonal flowers are flat folds. The 3 lacy square, I'm looking where they're sitting right now. The 3 lacy squares is a wall hanging. The spiral is a hoop finish. The Flowers for the Fall is a pillow. And then sort of the stained glass flowers is also framed, but this is the difference to me anyway. The sampler I had professionally framed, especially with its straight borders. I want someone else to make those nice and straight for me. The stained glass flowers I did myself, and so professional versus me came out okay. One of the inspirations for this truly was having this. This is a 4x6 frame, 4x6 frames, and I designed it to fit in 4x6 frames using 32 count. It obviously wouldn't work if you went to 28 or would be really tight. But then you could look to see what a 5x7 might look like. Anyway, so in the spirit of sometimes the professional framed is the way to go, and sometimes figuring out how to make it look decent on your own is the way to go, that's what I did for these. So 6 different threads, 6 different finishes, quite the variety in my mind. And I hope in yours too. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you're still here with me, I hope you enjoyed seeing my new releases. Once again, the expo is happening this week. Designers will be shipping out, Monday, Tuesday, like as early as possible to get into store owner hands, and they will be listed. I know there's plenty of stores that are doing pre-orders, and you can see on various websites. I hope you have found some fun things for yourself, whether they be mine or other designers, and are able to pick up a lot of new things for this time of year. I guess that's about it. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it. The likes and the comments and the subscribes, we all know it helps the YouTube algorithms, and I appreciate that as well. And there you go. Till next time. Bye.